Hey, seventh graders. We have been talking about viruses. So you guys just got through with 2 weeks of talking about some diseases, and we've been really focusing on viral diseases, talking about how they can kind of spread through a community or through a population, and then kind of hitting on herd immunity. Okay, and so that's really been the focal point of these last 2 weeks is to watch how a disease spreads. It can spread through the air if you're coughing, sneezing, and that's why we're wearing this mask, right? Because if I cough, you can definitely feel the wind from a couple feet away from my breath. But if I'm wearing this guy right here, right, then it knocks that down. So it's not necessarily that it keeps the virus from spreading, because viruses that we should have learned by now, viruses are so small they can fit through the pores in this. So everybody's like, well, why do we wear these? Well, again, the virus is carried on our breath, and it can be carried on our touch, right? I'm touching this face mask that I've been wearing all day, and if I'm touching other stuff and I have the virus, so I need to be conscious of, putting Germ-X on my hands all the time because I'm touching my face mask. But anyways, when I do wear this, even though the viruses can fit through the pores of this mask, it doesn't carry those virus particles nearly as far, right? I can blow on my breath and spread it out 6-7 feet or however far, but if I'm wearing this, it dramatically cuts that distance down. So let's go ahead and get into those notes. Again, you'll need these notes to do the worksheet, the virus and bacteria worksheet that was attached to today's plan. I originally had this for last week, but we just didn't get to it last week for our work, so we're going to get it today. So is a virus a living thing? No, it's not. Viruses, so you can see some of these pictures down here. A virus is really just a big molecule. It has a couple different components, but no, for a couple things, for starters, viruses cannot replicate on their own. Okay? They aren't cells. And then they don't have other characteristics of life. So we've talked about last chapter. All life have the 8 characteristics of life, right? They're made up of cells. They have metabolism, meaning they eat things for energy, or they use energy. Viruses don't respond to stimuli. They evolve and adapt, which some viruses do evolve and can adapt. So they do have some characteristics of life. All cells have, or all living things have DNA and genetic material. Viruses actually have some genetic material. So they are very lifelike, but they don't have all 8 characteristics, so we don't consider them living. However, they're right there on the boundary, and some people do argue that they are living things. So what are some diseases that can be caused by a virus? Well, there's a bunch, right? You guys learned about some on Meet the Germs activity that we did 2 weeks ago. We get measles, mumps, let's see, HIV, AIDS, human immunodeficiency virus, AIDS. Those are some bad ones. Cold sores, that you get on the corner of your mouth, and we'll talk about those guys. Cold sores, warts, stuff like that. I'm trying to think some other ones. There's a bunch, rabies and stuff like that. So just go ahead and write a couple of these down. The flu is a very good one, right? We get the flu every single year, the common cold. So these ones we're pretty familiar with. We get vaccines for the common cold. We don't necessarily get a vaccine for the flu. You can get a yearly flu vaccine and stuff like that. All right, so let's go ahead and get into this guy. What is a virus composed of? Do they have different shapes? So that's what this guy goes to. So I'd like you guys to go ahead and draw these. You can pause again. You can pause this video at any time. If I'm talking too fast, if you need to catch up, go ahead and do that. So we do have 3 different shapes. We have the polyhedral virus. Poly means many, so this is many sides. So they're actually made out of a bunch of like triangles, and it's triangles, or sometimes they can be like hexagons and stuff like that. But they're just these mini flat sides that are put together. And in this case, this one forms it looks like a circle, but they're flat sides, and it's just a bunch of geometrical shapes glued together. Here we have a helical virus, and then here we kind of have both of them put together in a complex virus. And this is actually called a bacteriophage right here, this guy that looks like a creepy spider. And he actually injects this genetic material. So you see this genetic material right here. He injects that right into the cell. So he'll sit on the cell membrane, sit down on it, and then inject it like a syringe, like a shot. Where this polyhedral guy, he'll actually be accepted into the cell. So he'll land with his attachment proteins. He'll land on the cell surface, and then the cell thinks this polyhedral virus is one of him, or thinks it's food or something like that, and accept it into the cell, tricking it, and then release that genetic material, and then thus killing it eventually. So our capsid, so it says, what is the virus composed of? So here's the 3 different shapes like we talked about. So what's the capsid? So first, the capsid is this guy right here, and you can kind of see this guy. I don't know if I can blow it up. Oh, whoa, way too big. See if I can go back. Oh my goodness. All right. So yeah, that'll blow it up a little more, help you guys out. So here's our protein coat. That's what the capsid is. It's a protein coat. It's essentially the container, and then what's inside the container is the genetic information or the genetic material, and that can be in the form of DNA or RNA. So here's our genetic information here. This is DNA and can be RNA, and we'll talk about the difference later on. It's not important right now, but you just need to know that DNA, RNA, right? It's that genetic material that is the instructions for everything, how everything's built and how a cell does anything. So like I said, this is something that cells or living things have in common with viruses. They do have genetic material. The envelope. Sometimes these guys, viruses, are enclosed in the host cell's membrane. And so what will happen, so here's our envelope, this outermost piece right here, is as the virus breaks out of the cell, and so I can show that down here. You guys will draw this later on. But this virus is injected here. Many viruses are made. And then as they break out, here's our cell membrane, right? This little blue line. These can shred up, and then sometimes they can wrap around the virus particles as they're breaking out of the cell. And then that's what disguises them. And so when white blood cells or, your immune system goes to find this infection, it can't find this infection because it's disguised as one of your own cells. And so that's what makes fighting viruses so tough. And then we have these attachment proteins, or the keys. And so these attachment proteins, if you guys want to go ahead and draw them, and you should be drawing this, your attachment proteins are just they can be whatever shape, but they're specific to what cell that they will attack, okay? So viruses, they're specific to organs. So like the common cold, the rhinovirus is specific to the upper respiratory tract. The influenza is specific to upper respiratory. There's other viruses that are specific to other organs because they have specific cell receptors on their cell membrane here that have specific shapes. Right, so if it has this specific shape and then this key fits in there perfectly, okay, then that cell will accept that virus in because that key fits the lock or the receptor. And so just for let me see here, this guy right here, if you guys remember watching this video,
contact,
you can see these virus particles.
This is the moment when infection begins.
Right, so this virus was just floating around.
How does infection happen?
Proteins all over him, and they're like hooks,
you see the
right?
tiny shapes there on the virus particle's surface? They seem like random blobs. In reality, they are tiny keys,
but again, you
proteins that have evolved to the perfect shape and size, enabling them to unlock these receptors on the surface of this lung cell.
Right? And so
like a smile and a handshake, the virus deceives this lung cell and is welcomed in,
since it has the key, right,
where it will command the cell to make more virus particles.
The house and you're able to get in. And so that's what the attachment proteins are. So our next one, what is a virus's number one goal? How do they do it? So the number one goal for a virus is all he wants to do is make copies. He wants to make copies. And so how does he do this? Well, he goes through 2 different pathways. He has the Lytic Cycle and the Lysogenic Cycle. And you do need to know the difference. There's a big difference here. And again, if you want to stop the video right here and draw this cycle here, I suggest you do that. So it starts out right here, essentially, number 1. Okay. Number 1, attach the host and inject into the cell. So this virus, whether it be this polyhedral guy or this complex or the helical, whatever, somehow they get their DNA into the cell. That DNA or that genetic material, whatever it is now in here, okay, along with the host cell's DNA. Okay, so we can go one or two ways from here. Let's go with the lytic cycle. So the lytic cycle is when symptoms are actually showing. So if you have a cold sore right on the edge of your mouth, this is the lytic cycle. Or a wart, and you see the warts popping up out of your skin, that's the lytic cycle. So this is a active virus where the new viral components are being made. So different virus, so the DNA of the virus is being replicated, new parts to the virus are being replicated. The host cell then lyse, and the viruses are released. So I do want you to know this word lyse. So lyse is a very specific term to cell burst. So a cell will literally burst like a balloon. So if you fill a balloon up with too much air or too much water, it's the same thing as these viruses. Once you get so many of them, the cell can no longer hold them, and then they just burst open, or they lyse. Okay, so the burst, lyse, same thing, except lyse is specifically talking about a cell breaking open. And so again, this is the host cell, right? And this virus needs a host cell in order to take over the cellular machinery and make more of the viral components. Okay, so there's the lytic cycle. The lytic cycle does kill the host cell, makes many more of these, and this is where we see the symptoms of a virus. Over here, we have the lysogenic cycle, and this is the latent period, or this is where a virus doesn't cause the sickness. This is the cold sore that you don't see right now, but later on you may get it. But that virus is always there. It's just right here. Okay, so you see how here's our viral DNA. It's red. Here's the red viral DNA. Well, here's our red viral DNA. The viral DNA integrates into the host chromosome or the DNA, right? It's just some kind of genetic material. And then this cell, whether it be a bacteria cell or even your own cell, your cells replicate. Bacteria cells replicate. That's just what they do. That's what all life does, is reproduces, right? And so this guy just keeps on reproducing. The host cell reproduces, and the viral DNA is replicated along with it. And it just keeps going over and over again like cells normally do. So nothing's wrong here at this point until it gets to this stage finally, when triggered, the virus becomes active. So finally, and we don't exactly know yet why viruses come in and out of the lysogenic to lytic cycle. There's some kind of trigger that causes it. We may think it's like stress and stuff like that. But anyways, the virus has become triggered, and then it enters this lytic stage where then the new viruses are produced, and then it goes through this lytic cycle. So there's our two lytic cycles, like lysogenic cycles. So lytic cycle, symptoms are made. We see the actual virus making people sick. The lysogenic is when the cell is in hiding, it's waiting, it's not triggered yet, and it just replicates along with the cell like it would normally do. And then you guys have one more thing down here on the back of your page, and it's what are the similarities, what are the differences? So similarities of viruses and bacteria. Well, we came up with two. Really, the two big ones that we really care about. And so similarities, they both have genetic material, and that's really important because genetic material is the center point of a cell, of all life, right? Because we have two types of living things. We have prokaryotic cells and we have eukaryotic cells. And one thing that they do have in common is they both have genetic material, whether it be DNA or RNA. And those are, they control everything. They tell the cell what to do, how to make different molecules and stuff like that. So very important. And then both, they can cause, they don't, not all bacteria are disease causing, not all viruses are disease causing, but they both can cause disease. Okay. Differences. So here's our virus. Not with an E. Virus, bacteria. So viruses, these guys are smaller. They're non-living. Need a host cell to replicate. Let's see, down here, bacteria. They're larger. living. This is kind of a common misconception today. So bacteria, obviously, they're made out of cells, so they're cellular. So they're made out of cells, not made of cells. Okay, so a virus is not a cell. You got to remember that. Virus is not a cell. Bacteria, so let's see, they can reproduce on their own. Okay. And so those are the really big differences. And like I said, here's the similarities. We kind of drew a table with 3 columns. So 2 columns with the differences from bacteria to viruses. And then this third column was the similarities of bacteria. So anyways, you guys have the notes now to go ahead and do your worksheet that you should have on Plan Book. Okay, so that's right here. Virus and bacteria worksheet. That's also on Teams. I prefer you to do it on Teams. Please make sure you guys are uploading this stuff to Teams. It makes it easier for me, so I know all of your guys' works in one place instead of having to figure out who emailed it to me this week or who submitted it on Teams to the next week. Let's see what else. Make sure you guys got this done last week. There's still a decent amount of people who did not. If you guys are having trouble looking at these links, you can see it right here. It says click Control plus click to follow the link. So I'll click Control, and then it turns into this. I'll click on it, and then this hyperlink will take me to the YouTube video. If not, then you guys can just go ahead and copy and paste this into YouTube, and then you'll find it that way. But what is an infectious disease? Like I said, that's kind of what Meet the Germs. We did that. We talked about infectious diseases. These are guys that, whether they're viruses or bacterial or sometimes even fungal, right? There's other microorganisms that can cause these infectious diseases that can disrupt the normal body and mind. What causes infectious diseases? Pathogens. Hopefully you guys played the Quizlet today. Like I said, make sure you guys are looking at my plan book. I had it all right here, Quizlet, spread of disease. So we had some new terms that we kind of learned here in this Quizlet. If you click here, again, you guys will need to do flashcards, learn, write, spell, test, stuff like that. You can do these flashcards that are super easy. And then you can kind of test yourself over here with match and gravity and stuff like that. So this is a learning thing. Disease, communicable disease, right? This is just a disease that can spread from one person or a species to another, so on and so forth. So I'm going to go ahead and stop it right there. If you guys need any more help, please let me know. And that's all I got for you today.